Awesome. So, good evening. It's a light crowd tonight, so no, low pressure. That's good. Yeah, oh no, I know, it's going around. So, and yeah, the COVID's going around again. Something like the flu's going around again. So, all kinds of stuff going around. We're even passing it around at work, and we work virtually. So, yeah. So I still don't understand that happens. Google says that's not possible, but I don't know. But would you mind leading us in prayer to get started?
Most gracious Heavenly Father, as we come before you this evening, we give you thanks for us to be able to go underneath this roof, be able to listen to a presentation from Eric and Cindy on their travels in the Bible lands, Father. Please be with the ones that couldn't make it tonight due to sickness or being out of town, whatever. They be with Eric as he gives us the things he wants us to show, Father, and we might be able to put it into our lives to make us stronger. Please be with us always in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Awesome. So, good evening. It's always nice to have the opportunity to share with you again. And if you're watching, live streaming, whatever, this is not a lesson. This is just Cindy and I sharing our recent trip to Israel back in May with everybody. And this is our journal, really. It's just us journaling what we did and trying to put notes to it so we can go back and remember where we were, what we did. And everywhere we went was noteworthy, right? Except for a few spots. Like, I think I'll show you a mall photo, like, it's probably not noteworthy, but it was interesting, to say the least. But so we'll just go through, going to share photos with you, talk to you about what we saw, how it fits with the Bible, and just share that with you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I guarantee I probably don't know the answers, but I'll do my best. And Cindy did want me to step back from last week, and I think, yeah, it's up on this one, right? So this is coming into the city of David, and I'll go ahead and see if I can click back a little bit more. So as we were coming into the city of David and walking down to where we were going to enter Hezekiah's tunnel, so we saw some different things. And this right here, this stepstone structure dates back to or during or just before David's time. So this would be on the outside wall from what they think was David's palace in that area. And the large stepstone structure is probably David's palace. Some of the stones are at least dated back to David's time and possibly earlier. There's a tower to the left of the stepstone structure. So if you see that tower to the left, there's a person right there, and that tower off to the left side of it. That right there is, they believe the foundations are from Nehemiah's time. So pretty cool, we thought anyway. So, and it's just kind of interesting to see how that stuff, can stand the test of time and still be around. And we know that Nehemiah's structure was built rapidly, so probably wasn't even the best construction in and of itself.
Where is this compared to Jerusalem, the city of David?
It's right on the edge.
Okay.
Yeah, right on the outside edge. Yeah. So let's see. So I'll go ahead and click. We talked about the going through Hezekiah's tunnel, and is Debbie? I don't see her here. So is she teaching classes? Painter? Okay. Because I know she was asking about the Pool of Siloam, and it's really interesting when you think about the Pool of Siloam. Just to kind of reinforce this. Where they believe this is or was would occupy more space than what our entire property for the building is here, like the entire church property. So not just the building, but from the front edge of the street to the back, side to side, is only about 3/4 of how big this pool was. So it would still be a quarter bigger. So it would overlay this. So pretty interesting. And one of the things that struck me in particular when you go over to Israel, and I don't know, for me, like, just, it helped me appreciate, or just kind of like stuck in my mind, and this is just me speaking, is just the symbolism of water, like how important water was in that culture. Because if you think about it, water is a precious commodity. It's hard to get. It's not everywhere. They really have to work hard. What's that?
It's life.
It's life, absolutely. They really got to work hard to get it and to move it around and get it to the mitzvahs and the water, their crops, just whatever they're doing. It's not easy. It's not just turn on the tap and there's water. So it really kind of stuck out with me in that regard. Just, I don't know why, but just really kind of resonated with me. It's like, yeah, it's like, wow, water. I could just see how important water would be in this culture. So then we moved on and we went over to the Jewish quarter. And so we walked back to the old city, up a bunch of stairs into the Jewish quarter to a place called the Temple Treasures Institute. So where a Jewish group has implements and items for the temple ready to go, waiting for the new temple to be constructed on the Temple Mount, and the Muslim buildings all destroyed in the process. No pictures allowed in here, so what we did is I'll show you a few photos, but we had to pull those off of the internet. We weren't allowed to take any pictures in there. And it contained many ancient paintings depicting temple life. It contains the golden menorah, anointing oil, and items all made from special artisans ready to be placed into the third temple. So like they're ready to go. They're preparing everything. And so you have the table of the showbread, an incense altar covered in gold, and priestly garments. And this is like they have people and artisans that come in and make this stuff. Like they made it and they're trying to replicate what they believe it was at the time. So they're getting ready and they're prepared to rebuild the temple. That's the mission of this. The grand finale at the end was behind some curtains that opened up, and it was a reproduction of what they believe the Ark of the Covenant would look like. So they are ready to go. So I think they're just missing a few things, but like the place to do it. And the Jews in this one here, they think this ancient snail shell is the source of the blue dye used in the high priest tunic and ephod and thread. The Temple Institute had this snail in a jar, preserved, and have used the dye in the priestly garments that they have prepared. So the snail was found from illegally removed dirt from the Temple Mount. So you just got to imagine, like culturally here, they're just, you have the Jews, they're doing their thing. The non-Jews are doing their thing. They're fighting over, like they're digging out, the Muslims are digging out dirt over here, and they don't want the Jews to have it. And the Jews are going in the trash can and taking that dirt that they dug out from somewhere and sifting through it. It really is a pretty interesting dynamic. But that's how they came across that. They found that in some removed dirt from the temple that they absconded. We then walked back to the old city and up. Oh, that looks like a repeat. So this right here, I'm going to skip for the purpose of time, but it's a video. So we could link to it, and it takes you to a video they have for it. I want to do this respectfully because it's important to them, but I thought it was kind of weird. So, truthfully. So it kind of creeped me out, like the whole thing just kind of made me feel just sort of awkward and weird kind of being there because I don't know, it was just me. That's just me speaking. But if you look it up, and it's very important to them, they're very serious about it. They got everything ready to go. So then we proceeded to the Southern Temple Mount. Now this was, for me, got over this little weird part. I was like, okay, whatever, do this. But it was interesting. We learned some stuff. Then we got to visit the Southern Temple Mount. And so we went to what's called the Davidson Center. So where we saw the southwest corner of the Temple Mount. And we got to see a first century street crushed in one area by rubble that had been tossed from atop the Temple Mount, where shops and booths would have been along this street. So we're entering over there. That's the entrance. And then on this side, this is what would have been, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Cindy, but this would have been the original streets. So they had excavated down to where the original streets would have been, and that's rubble from where it would have been pushed over. So,
So, Eric? I'm just curious, I'm trying to remember, because I stood there too, but are these the rocks that were pushed over by the Romans whenever they destroyed the temple?
yes.
Yeah, that's what
Yep. Yep.
So is this city, Eric, built up on top of that wall right there? Is that the city now?
Yeah, that's the city now. Yeah, the temple. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's really, and it's really good because it's always kind of hard to, you got to step back and reflect. You had the temple, everything over there is this way. Like, you're there, you have whatever you have, you build whatever you build. Someone comes along and conquers it and, throws debris all over it, fills it in, and then builds something else. So you have this. And I think at one point, I don't know if we'll get to that today or not, or this evening, but there's like one spot, I think they said there was like 27 different layers, identifiable layers, that they could tell of peoples that had been there. So pretty interesting. Good question. This right here, so these massive stones were hurled down by the soldiers of the Roman legion, so to your point. And it's really, I think, I'd like to get a good shot. Hopefully, oh yeah, here's a Herod stone. So these stones were huge, and they had this, very identifiable border. So if you see that on the right side here in particular, see how it has that like edge around it? That's a Herod stone. And I think we'll get to it. We'll see a quarry at Nebi Samuel where they would have made stones like this. But if you just think about the massive amount of effort, not just to make it, I mean, that's pretty impressive by itself with primitive tools, but moving it from, one point to another to assemble it, let alone getting it level and set in place and all the things it need to do to make a solid structure. So pretty impressive. Let's see this one here. We saw this later at the Jewish Museum. So this stone right here is, I don't know if I can read the center photo from here. Let me try my glasses. So this stone up here on the right, so if you look up on the left, I think, is what we're trying to display here. So that stone on the right would have been up there on top of the wall on the left. So in the original time. And so we're going to see this later at the museum, and this is the place of trumpeting. So they would have stood up on top of that wall at this stone, and that's where they would have been trumpeting at. Yeah, they found it down below in the rubble, in the debris, and it was moved over to a museum. And that's a picture right there on the right. That's at the museum, and that's Robinson's Arch. Is that right, Cindy? Yeah, so that's Robinson's Arch right there. So it would have been on that corner, kind of like this. As you're going like that, it would have been right there, comes out, and then down. So from the original temple. So we thought that was kind of neat, and we'll see that again later. Here it is at the temple. I don't think I had video, but the way I converted it over to get it to work here, I don't think this is going to work. So let's try. Yeah, it didn't work. That's a video embed, but I had to do a version save so it would work here. So Kent and I are still trying to figure out why I can't get it to work here. So, but we lost that. But basically, that's that stone right there. Luke Chandler just speaks to us a little bit about it and would provide a little context. So really excited for you guys to meet Luke and Melanie. You're really going to enjoy Luke. So I'm setting them up for failure now. Now you guys are going to hate them. So, this right here is these would be the giant piers. So I think this is coming off of, this would have been off of an arch. Is this Robinson's Arch, Cindy? Do we think it was off of that? Yeah. So these large stones originally supported, so they would have been the springer of the arch. So, and they would have helped support that up. And within those slots, so as you kind of see right there in the slots on the arch at the bottoms, there would have been, they would have used them. Everywhere space was a commodity, it would have been a store or something, used in some way. But that's what that is. And that's what that shows. And again, like, look at the size of those stones, just the massive effort, a lot of slave power to move all that stuff around, I'm sure. I thought it was pretty cool. Right here, here's another view of Robinson's Arch where if we go back, this right here, these would have been the piers of it. And then if you look, it's right up here. So a little further view back. And if you can see this spot right here, Luke has like a picture of it. He's kind of holding that up and pointing it out to us. So that would have been the arch right there. And pretty neat. Pretty interesting stuff to see. Now, this right here, it really is too bad because this is a video that I'm just bummed that I couldn't get to transfer over. But so it wasn't uncommon, or matter of fact, it was very common. We would, consistently hear the call to prayer, while we were there. I think the first night, when we woke up in the morning, I slept good. But Cindy's like, oh man, I heard this, singing or something last night. I didn't know what it was. So, we later figured out it's just they have a call to prayer 5 times a day. So in the Islamic tradition, the Muslims are called to 5 scheduled daily prayers, the Salat, by a formal announcement called the Adhan. The Adhan is also used to call believers to Friday worship at the mosque. The Adhan is called out from the mosque by the muezzin, and I'm probably not doing this justice, who stands either in the mosque minaret tower, if the mosque is large, or in a side door if it's a smaller mosque. In modern times, the muezzin's voice usually is amplified by a loudspeaker mounted on the minaret. Some mosques play a recording of the Adhan instead. So the meaning of the Adhan, the Arabic word Adhan means to listen. The ritual serves as a general statement of shared belief and faith for Muslims, as well as an alert that prayers are about to begin inside the mosque. A second call, known as Iqama, then summons Muslims to line up for the beginning of the prayers. So we heard this often, 5 times a day. Depending on where we were, we could hear it. So I do wish I had the video clip for that, to share that with you. So here's a mikveh outside the entrance. These were everywhere. And so anyone know what a mikveh is?
Ceremonial bath.
Yeah, that works. So the Jews always cleanse themselves before entering the temple and other times. There were also some residents outside this area, but the mikvahs were everywhere. And everywhere we went, we would see, mikvahs were set up. And again, going to this, connecting the dots with how much, what water meant to them. It was like water. It was like the center of life. And it is. But it was very, very telling as well as we kind of went around and saw these different things. And I don't know why, but that really just stuck with me when I was there. So here's some original stairs leading up to the temple. So this would have been at the base of the temple. You're looking on a map view. You're right down here at the bottom corner. So I think that's the southern wall. And right at the original entrance. So pretty cool to say we got to stand on those and sit and visit and learn. So now, people say, hey, what was the highlight of your trip? Lots of different highlights, but I think this was one of them. This definitely qualifies up there, and if not the top one. So this is possibly the Western Huda Gate. That stone right there, they believe, they're confident that that's part of the original temple entrance at the Huda Gate. This would have been a door that Jesus most certainly would have exited, and an original stone he most probably walked on. So to me, that was a highlight of the trip. It's like I could say I stood somewhere where there's a high likelihood, significant, statistically probable, however you want to look at it, that Jesus walked across that stone at some point. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's a rendition. They had like these little things you could look through and look up at it, and it's like this is what it would have looked like at that time. So that's the, an artist's rendition, sort of like a little telescope, kaleidoscope thing. So I just stood back and took a picture. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, if you look, talking about how they kept building on top of things, like, so there we are, that would have been the original entrance, so the original temple, and you see how much they built up over it, so, because that's current, that's today. Make sense? Good. So after hanging around the original temple entrance, we finished our day. So I just grabbed that photo. I thought it looked pretty cool. It was kind of a fitting end to the day. And we made our way around. Here's the eastern Holda gates. They're walled up now. So if you can see, can you see the blue brackets right there? Does that show up pretty good? Okay, sometimes, you don't know with the coloring. But that's where the western Holda gates would have been, or the eastern, I mean. Here's the Mount of Olives in the distance. So this is the southern wall to the left of me as you're looking. And, really, if you kind of look, I mean, that's the Mount of Olives right there. It's not that far away. So it really gives you that context. Sometimes, like, at least for me, I want to speak for everybody, but when you're reading it in the black and white and you're forming the visions in your mind, you form the visions like you think they are. So it's different when you go and look, hey, that was actually pretty close. It wasn't miles and miles away. It was like right there. And we'll see that so often as we go through our visit here. So, that concluded our day, and we went back to the hotel for dinner at this point. So, and we got, really officially started on our kosher diet, although we did start in the morning. So, it was part of that day. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't enjoy the kosher diet at all. So, wasn't for me. I like bacon and eggs in the morning. And really the big thing on the kosher diet, there's a lot of, when I read about it and talk about it, there's a lot of variations, but there's some core elements of the kosher diet. So dairy and meat don't mix. So you get one or the other, you're not getting both at a meal. But they did have good food, and it was weird to me, like at breakfast, there'd be pasta dishes out, like, spaghettis and type of stuff like that. So it was just an odd diet for me. And I remember one night we came back, and it was all buffet style, so they're serving large crowds, and the food was good. I mean, I don't want to say it was bad. Just like the dietary approach to it just didn't work for me. Like one night I got excited, they had prime rib. I was like, oh, cool, prime rib. Well, what's the part about the blood? There is none. They cooked that prime rib to like leather. It was terrible. So I was so excited, and then I cut into that thing, and I was like, oh, this isn't going to be any good. And it wasn't. So they burnt that thing to a crisp, but there was no blood. So, but, that said, hopefully there we go. Let me go back. So the desserts. So if you think about it, I never thought about this, but there was one lady there. If you have dairy issues, not dairy tolerant, like, this is a great place to go for desserts. So they are the masters of making desserts that are, dairy-free. So you would never know. You would look at, everything laid out, you would think, oh, there's got to be dairy in that. There's dairy in none of it. Absolutely none of it. If you have, lactose intolerance, you don't have to worry about it. So really good. They had good desserts, even though they lacked dairy. But the really bad part was you couldn't get a good cup of coffee with some cream in it to go with that dessert in the evening. So, because they had meat out. Okay, so that wraps up that day. So we're on to our next day. We go down to the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea was fun as well. Like, everything was fun there. I think, speaking for myself, but Cindy and I both get pretty excited about going through this and remembering and whatnot. It was a lot of fun. So we did a lot of good stuff this next day. So May 12th, we're back at it again. We go to Masada. So we're heading down, we head out of Jerusalem, we descend down below sea level through the wilderness to the Jordan River Valley. We pass through Jericho in the distance, and we turn right and follow the western shore of the Dead Sea down toward Masada. So here's passing by the Dead Sea as we're driving along. And you can see it's not the waves breaking along the water there, that's the salt. So that's visible salt.
Top of the water,
What was that?
is that beach or is that salt on top of the water?
Oh, no, I don't think the salt's on top of the water, although it's very mineral. I mean, it's heavy minerals, so I wouldn't be surprised.
That's
So,
salt.
yeah, I'm talking more about where the land and the water meet together. It's not the surf breaking, it's just salt. Yeah, yeah. So we drive by Engedi, but for us, it was on the opposite side of the bus, so we didn't get a good photo of that. But this is where David may have hidden from Saul in the caves. So I don't know if I chased down a photo of it or not, but if I did, I'll point it out. So Engedi was also a water source for the area, so it's possible that David was in the hills in this area as he was hiding from Saul. So here's the Judean desert is mountainous on the way to Masada. So Masada is a stronghold or a strong foundation. So this is the same word David uses in 2 Samuel 22, 2 and 3. It's quite possible, as I was mentioning, that David may have taken refuge here a couple of times while hiding from Saul. Masada, Herod the Great built this desert fortress on an isolated, massive flat-top mountain at the western end of the Judean desert overlooking the Dead Sea. He built 2 luxurious palaces on the top as a refuge for himself. And so we're approaching as we come in. So that's the flattened out hilltop of Masada, pretty impressive to look at. And here's the cable car that we were taking up there. So they stuffed you on that car. It was kind of funny. They were like looking at us and we're looking at them and there's all these people and they're like, keep going, keep going. So they packed you in that thing. It was like, okay, hopefully it doesn't fall down out of the sky. And I can't see this real well. Okay, yeah, it shows up there. So this was built in 1998. It's about 900 meters of a ride. And only takes like 3 minutes there. So, that was it. So pretty interesting.
You can see all the people on that.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
actually see it really.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. Oh, they packed you. Yeah, it was. For me, it reminded me of for those of y'all that went through basic training in some way, the cattle cars. So they stuffed us in there. It's like, just get in. You can get 2 more. Keep going. So get in real tight. So Masada can also be ascended by foot, but we didn't do that day. It's called the Winding Snake Path. So that's that centered photo right there. So you can walk up there. It's about it's 1.67 miles. So, and it's a 1,148 feet elevation gain. So it's a healthy hike. Especially on a warm day. So we get up there, we look through the 3-level palace on the mountain's north end. So here's the entrance as we're walking into it. So it contained luxurious Roman baths. It was pretty interesting, and I was thinking of my father-in-law there, as I was kind of going through. I was like, oh, you probably really appreciated this, because just the ingenuity and the way they would do this. So you're out here on top of this flat mountaintop, and they're building basically a spa, for Herod, and so here's a bath and the entrance and the bath to a mikvah, and this is probably so we're looking at a terrace right there on that left side, and right here is probably a cold pool. So if you've ever been in a nice sauna or something, they'll have a cold pool. So this for me was pretty interesting. And again, this is where I was thinking of my father-in-law. I was like, oh, he's probably looking at this, really trying to figure out how this worked. But it's pretty interesting. So this is a steam room. And the makings of a steam room. And the slaves heated it up by blowing hot air from the outside at that furnace. So you have this furnace is right here, the center photo. So the slaves are working out there stoking the fire, and there's some sort of contraption to push the hot air in. And then you have right here on the right side in particular, so if you can see like those little maybe peg-looking things coming out of the ground. So it's just like little stilts, and they would put they built the floor over top of that. So, and I think I have a photo of that coming up, but they would build the floor over that, so they're blowing the slaves are out there stoking the fire, blowing steam in through there, through the bottom, and it's coming in under the floor and coming up through grates or however they did that. So pretty creative, and Herod's looking, for all the luxuries. So let's see, is this one a better? Yeah, so this one right here, you can see on this side, so this would be like the stilts. So the floor, and the hot air is blowing in on the bottom side, and the floor is built over top of it. That's a shot of it there too, but this probably shows it better. So I thought that was pretty interesting myself. This would have been the steam room. Another shot of the raised floor and how they would assemble that. So beautiful views looking down to the lower terrace. So if you look, the center one right here, so we're at a high point, and you're looking down. That would have been a terrace, a palatial terrace. And we walked down to that. I think we walked down to that, right? Yeah, okay. So you can see the Dead Sea. You're looking out over the Dead Sea from Masada. Those hills on the other side are the country of Jordan. So you're looking, at this point, you're looking over to Jordan. So the lower terrace, some shots of it right here. So just lap of luxury. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, there was a pool down there, wasn't there, Cindy? The lower terrace? Yeah. No, wasn't there a pool down there, though?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's original frescoes.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be from the time. So they really, luxurious, and just think about all the slave power that went in to make that happen. So it's on top of a hill. So pretty interesting. Now, the lowest terrace of Herod's northern palace, so he had multiple palaces at Masada. So just ornate, beautiful. Can only imagine what it looked like at the time. This is after many years of exposure and being worn down. Here's a large rock-hewn cistern, and this is one way that they manage their water. So any water that fell in the winter, they would collect them in these cisterns. They also would manually go get water too and bring them up and dump them in the cisterns. So they really spent a lot of time and effort collecting water so they could be hydrated up there on top of the mountain. Here's another view of a mikveh, and there's a cistern in the background. You can see that ladder, I think right there on that right side, if you can see that. So that's a ladder going down into the cistern. So, and again, example of the mikveh. So according to the secular historian Josephus Flavius, around 75 years after Herod's death, Jewish rebels took the fortress and held out here during the latter part of the Jewish revolt. The Roman 10th Legion showed up and surrounded the mountain with camps and a siege wall dotted with towers, and they made a logistical road all the way to En-Gedi to procure water for the full legion, and the road is still fully visible today, as well as the camp walls. Now let me see if I can point those out to you. Is it this one? Yeah. So I think, and Cindy help me out here if I get it wrong, but I think as you look kind of right here on this photo, and you see that area, I don't know what that is, but do you see that that structure there that's sort of like, two rectangles together? Just follow that a little bit to the right. and that would have been where the Roman 10th Legion was camped. So right there. So, and my wife is nodding, so I think I'm getting it right. So, and then, so I think, is that, I think that road right there in front of it, going off that way, that's off to Engedi, isn't it? Or is it the other way? On the left? Okay. You sure? I thought that was the siege ramp or the snake trail. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Listen to her, not me. So, the natural route to the summit is the snake path, and it's a winding route on the east face of the mountain. Not suitable for an assault on the summit, so the Romans constructed a massive earthen ramp on the opposite, shorter side. They used thousands of stones and beaten earth and moved a battering ram and catapults up the ramp to breach the wall. The breach wall is still obvious. Let me see if this one is here. So I think, let me go. Thought we had a better shot of that. So I think it's right here. They're coming up. Let's go through real quick. No, we must have left off a photo. I know we have a better photo of the siege ramp, but really it's pretty interesting. Remember I talked about it was 1,100 foot gain, 1,140-ish, 50, whatever it was. So it's a pretty substantial gain of elevation. And it was a very common practice for, the assaults is they would build these, they would build siege ramps. So it's just they're piling up debris so they can get up to the top of the wall to breach it, to get over it. So very common. And you think about, this isn't a quick battle. This is going to be long-term because it's going to take a long time to build that kind of stuff. So lots of slave power. And then you think about it from the city's perspective that's trying to defend the breach. They keep building the wall higher to make the breach ramp harder to build. So they're doing that. And typically what was a common practice was they would use slaves of that ethnicity to do the work of building the siege ramp. So if you're trying to defend yourself, but you're put in the perplexing position of, well, I don't want to hurt my own people because it's your people that are building that. They're just slaves. So you just think about all that stuff. It's kind of a lot to chew on. So storerooms were found up here with large numbers of broken jars that had been for storage of food items. And I think, if I'm right, Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the way that climate is there, they still came along many, many, many years later and just found viable, like this food was still viable. It was still edible. Just sort of the natural, arid, dry environment preserves it pretty well. So anyone want to guess what the picture on the left is? Yeah, there's people on the tour, but what is the room? It's a synagogue. So, so this is the synagogue. It served the Jews who lived here during the revolt. Fragments of 2 scrolls, part of Deuteronomy and Ezekiel 37, including the vision of the dry bones, were found hidden here. According to Josephus, who recounts a story told him by 2 surviving women, the leaders of the Zealots, who numbered nearly 1,000 men, women, and children, decided that all the Jewish defenders should commit suicide rather than be servants to the Romans. So they burnt down the fortress and killed each other. They cast lots and chose 10 men to kill the remainder, and then one last man would kill himself. 10 potsherds with Hebrew names inscribed on them were found inside. And Josephus said everything was burnt except for the stores, so the Romans would know it was not hunger that led to their suicide. So there were 2 surviving women and 5 children that hid themselves in a cistern, and they had their lives spared, is the story. So then we go over to Qumran, and we proceeded north to Qumran, and the Essenes designed a great aqueduct system to keep their mikvah pools and cisterns filled. So this right here, which looks like maybe a sidewalk or a trail to me. This was actually an aqueduct system, so that's how they would move the water around and capture it. So the Essenes were a mystic Jewish sect during the Second Temple period, and they flourished from around 2nd century to 1st century. And the Jewish historian Josephus records that the Essenes existed in large numbers. Thousands lived throughout Roman Judea. They were fewer in number than the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the other two major sects at the time. The Essenes lived in various cities but congregated in a communal lifestyle dedicated to voluntary poverty, daily immersion, and asceticism. Their priestly class practiced celibacy, and most scholars claim they succeeded from the Zadokite priest. So just got to look around. A large cemetery was discovered with graves, mostly males, and again, another mikvah in the picture on the right there. So, right there. Or right there. I think it's that one right there, isn't it? Yeah. And here's where Oliver would go to work every day. This is a potter's workshop. So, does that look comfortable? Would you like that? Yeah. Totally. I looked at that and said, yep, Oliver would probably like that. So, did you get to see anything like that when you were there? Yeah. So, and then here is where the this is cave 4. So nearly 900 scrolls were discovered in a series of 11 caves, possibly hidden in the First Jewish-Roman War. So Bedouin teenagers that were tending sheep and goats near the ancient settlement tossed a rock into an opening on the side of the cliff. They heard a shattering noise. They went and investigated, found the collection of clay jars with leather and papyrus scrolls, 7 of them in total. These were the first of the discoveries. The Dead Sea Scrolls included fragments from every Old Testament book in the Hebrew Bible except Esther, and the only complete preserved Isaiah. What? Question? Oh, just an itch. Just an itch? Okay. That happens to me too. So here we are. We're just looking over at the plains of Moab on the other side of the Jordan River. So we're standing over here, and you're looking over that way to the plains of Moab. Moses and Elijah both ended their earthly ministry over there, while Jesus began his with baptism in the nearby Jordan by John the Baptist. And interestingly, Moses and Elijah also appeared with Jesus in the Transfiguration. So on to the Dead Sea. Dead Sea was pretty cool. We finished the day here at the northwest corner of the Dead Sea, and this is the lowest place on earth. Interestingly, but in a sad way, the Dead Sea is shrinking 3 feet per year, every year, and some experts believe it could be dried up by 2050. So there's a proposal to pipe water in from the Red Sea, but there's a lot of opposition against it by the conservationists. So, but it's really interesting to see. You can see the demarcation lines over time, how it's gone down. And 3 feet per year, that's pretty big. So the Dead Sea is almost 10 times as salty as the ocean. The mineral content of the water is low content of allergens in the atmosphere. The type of sun and location have specific healing effects. So you can see, like, that guy right there, he has the mud rubbed all over him. That's what they did. They get out, they rub the mud all over them. It's like having a mud rub. You know, it's got good therapeutic values to it. People travel from all over for its therapeutic values. They use the mineral-rich mud to cover their bodies. And it was really odd, but in a neat way. Like, there's no way you cannot float in the Dead Sea. Like, you just lay back, it's like laying on a pillow, literally. So I think you could, like, sit up and read a book. I mean, it's like that, you know, it just has that much texture to it. So it was really interesting. But we got to jump in there and float around for a few minutes. And then you got to spend a lot of time rinsing yourself off, because it will stain all of your clothing if you don't get get all of the water out of your clothes. Good place to end, May 13th. perfect. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, ask Oliver.